Our next presenter is Morpho Trust. Coming up will be Mark DeFria and David Keltz.
Hi there, everyone. Everybody can hear me okay, right? All right, good. My name is Mark DeFria. I'm the Senior Director of Solutions Strategy at Morpho Trust, and one of the folks that's been involved in our digital identity initiative, along with David Keltz, who joins me, as well as Will Ko and Patrick Clancy, who are here in the audience. So this is our first chance to actually share this pilot with all of you kind of firsthand. You know, there was the announcement and there were some things on the websites and some news articles and the like, but we're very excited to be able to share this with you. We recognize that our company may not be one that you've ever heard of before, but hopefully by the time we're done, you understand who we are and what this pilot's all about and why we're excited about it, and more importantly, what we think it promises to the online world. So let's get right into it. Quick little bit about our company, and then we're going to move right into what the solution's all about. The mission of Morpho Trust is to simplify, secure, and protect the lives of the American people, and we do that with our secure identity solutions. Simplifying, you'd see us in places where we have our IDENTIGO centers. These are enrollment centers where people go to have their identity background checks done, and they're enrolled in various programs, everything from state employees through anybody who's been through the TSA PreCheck program has been through one of our enrollment experiences. On the protection side, we provide solutions in the biometric and law enforcement solutions at the national level and some of the state and local level. And then from a securing perspective in our identity solutions, we have business with 42 state driver license systems. So we're touching a lot of people through the solutions that we provide. And what makes us unique is that we are uniquely able to tie a physical person to a highly trusted identity record throughout the life cycle of identity, whether it be the act of enrolling somebody into a new program, verifying their identity, issuing a credential, authenticating them later on, or actually managing the identity throughout its term life. So our aspiration is to create a safe and simple future where you can make your identity claim and no one else can. And that's what brought us to this pilot. So we view the challenge in two ways. So I'm going to give you a quick look at how we as a company see the challenge, and then we're going to drill down specifically into the challenge as it pertains to the state of North Carolina and our pilot project. So when we look at online identity, we see it as a transition that's been happening over time from when we all used to do business in person, and everything has been over time migrating to the online domain. But when things were done in person, and many of them still are when they're highly trustworthy transactions, the way that we proved who we were, we pulled out our driver's license and we stood next to it with our smiling face, and the person on the other end of the desk or wherever else knew that we were who we claimed to be. And that's because deep down we know that that credential that we're holding, we know what it's supposed to look and feel like, right? We may not have some technology to scan it all the time, but we know what it's supposed to feel like. We know that the person that I'm looking at is the same person I see on the document. But we also know what process we all had to go through to get that document. We had to go to the DMV, the Motor Vehicle Associations of America, and we had to bring a certain set of documents, and we had to go through a number of questions, and we had to prove to them that we were who we claimed to be in order to get that document. That's why we trust it, and that's what holds a lot of promise. But as soon as our transactions started going online, we lost that ability to be able to use our very human means of verifying the identity of somebody because they're at the other end of a wire. So that all became very blurry, very hard for us to figure out what to do and how to authenticate the person is who they claim to be. So what did we do instead? We had to rely on something else. And that's got us to where we are today. We have a variety of something else's. Those are usernames and passwords. Sometimes it's a behavioral biometric. It might be a token that's been given, you know, like we've seen before on keychain tokens, or we may ask a series of questions about your past or things that you've done, or use some sort of financial mechanism to come up with something. But why can't we transform the thing that we already trust? And that's the basis of why we're here. We believe that we can create an electronic ID directly from the trust that we have in our driver's licenses for online purposes. We can enhance the trust that's available in the internet through standardized communication links using protocols. And we're going to replace that physical act of matching the person to that document with the use of biometrics and multi-factor authentication. And then finally, in keeping with the principles of the strategy, we're going to build for the individual, make sure that their protection is first and foremost. And lastly, we're targeting a very high level of assurance. Everything from the lowest levels of perhaps anonymous transactions all the way through high levels of assurance for more secure transactions that today may not even be able to be accomplished. So what's that mean for North Carolina? North Carolina's got a very specific problem. We're addressing an issue with their SNAP program, as they refer to it, their FNS program, Food and Nutrition Services, whereby people have to come into an office to have their identity proven, verified, so that they can go through with the application process. And as you can imagine, that requires incremental headcount to address volume spikes. It's a brick and mortar problem. You need to have enough brick and mortar locations to be able to handle the applicant population. The other thing is it's also difficult for people that need access to these programs to sometimes get themselves to a facility to get their benefits in a timely fashion. So there's a variety of factors that need to be addressed. And with the solution that we've proposed in the pilot that's been awarded, we're going to be able to show results such as no need for incremental headcount to be able to handle influxes of additional people. Don't have to get more physical locations. Applicants don't have to miss work or pay to travel or have the child taken care of for the day so they can get to an office. And financially, save the time of that in-person interview potentially, which, as we all know, means money. So what's that going to look like? Today, when someone goes to an office, they're going to come into the office, they're going to sit down with a caseworker, and they're going to go through an interview process. The first piece of that is going to be them proving who they are. And if they're successful in proving who they are, they're with that first little green check mark, they'll be approved to go in and actually hit the eligibility system and determine whether or not they meet the criteria of the program and they're actually going to be able to get benefits. Or they're not going to pass that eligibility test and they may be declined for benefits. The other potential thing that happens is maybe they didn't bring enough with them to get through the process of even proving who they are, which means I get to come back someday and do it all over again. With the new process, they can do it at home. And you see here in our little icons, use of the QR code in the mobile device, they'll be able to assert their identity online in a highly secure way, in a way that DHHS can trust that the person is who they claim to be, and then they're going to go through that eligibility determination once again. But they can do that all without having to go to the office. That's the aim here. Now, of course, there'll be some people that maybe don't want to do that and they don't feel as comfortable doing these things online. Then the doors are always going to be open for them to come back in and do so in a physical setting. But those that have a driver's license or a state ID issued by the state of North Carolina would be invited to use this pilot. So where do we fit in this whole ecosystem? Because of who we are as a company and the populations that we've served in the past, we kind of tend to go towards the higher end of the trust scale. And that's why we've attempted to put together this program the way we have. And there's also a gap we want to try to fill. So you see here in our little chart, you got low trust and high trust. And where we see a large collection of solutions today are kind of on the mid to lower level, starting with self-attested accounts that slowly and incrementally add different factors to try to improve them. But we drew a little line here, and it's not a scientific line, right? There's probably people here at Georgia Tech that can correct me all day about that. But there is an in-person proofing process that's critical. And that's really the secret sauce of the solution, is that in order to get to those higher levels of trust, we all know that there needs to be that in-person proofing process where someone's identity has been verified and authenticated to a level of trust such that the token is meaningful. And that's really what's difficult to get at today in the broader marketplace because it's time-consuming, it's expensive, and it's hard to get to all these people. But we feel like if we can bridge that gap by bringing, like North Carolina DOT, the DMV, the driver's license record into play, we have a way of bridging that gap and getting to that high level of assurance because When you dig down deep into the processes, we're going to see a lot of commonality between what's required here and what you see in some of the higher trust programs already in place. So quick basics, and then I'm going to give it to David to talk a little bit more about how some of the workflows are going to look. Morpho Trust EID solution, a couple quick bullets so that everybody understands where we're at. In our model, Morpho Trust is going to play the role of identity provider. The DMVs are playing the role of identity authority. We're looking to them to authenticate an identity so that we can issue the credential. That credential is going to carry the trust inherent in the DMV's identity proofing process. We're going to relate the physical person with their driver's license record biometrically. We're using photo matching through the mobile device to accomplish that. We're putting the control and management of the use of that credential in the consumer's hands, and we're going to protect their privacy, once again, with the use of that biometric so that they and only they can assert their identity and accomplish the transaction they want to accomplish. Last quick thing, if you've tracked us at all, you know what the goals are all about, but we're going to prove that the EID can be created that carries the trust of the driver's license. We're going to demonstrate the elevation of trust using biometric multi-factor authentication, and we're going to define a framework in which consumer entities can trust each EID carrying the trust of the state DL. There are two sides of the project. One is the one I just mentioned with the state, with DHHS. The other is using OpenID Connect to bring the trust of this authoritative EID to some commercial domains, specifically using our partners, MyCard and Twofer. MyCard is an IDP already in existence today. We're going to show that they can elevate the trust of one of their accounts through integration with us. And our partnership with Twofer in this effort is going to show that consumers could choose the authentication tool of their choice to be able to authenticate one of our EIDs. And on the right-hand side here, you see a list of our key partners. University of Texas at Austin Center for Identity is playing a key role here. Glue we're relying on from an infrastructure perspective. And I just mentioned our other two commercial parties in addition to Debbie Diener. So with that, I'd like to introduce David Keltz to walk you through some of the mechanics.
Thanks, David. Side one here. Mark talked a little about what we're trying to accomplish. I was going to get into how and some of the technologies that we're using, that we want to use and we're proposing to use for this. Everyone's familiar with the process of going to a legal authority, bringing your documentation, receiving the physical credential. We want to start really with an evaluation of that, to come up with a scoring system through work with University of Texas that sort of defines or quantifies the value that we have that's in that identity proof. And then you're also probably familiar with the sort of biometric, this is what I call it self-enrollment, so current biometrics that you get on your phone like Touch ID. These are, when you pick up the phone the first time, you're enrolling yourself. So your biometric at that point really ties back to that event. And we want to tie the biometric back to the original proofing event. And we want to use standards as wherever we possibly can, or work to adjust some of the standards in order to make this available to make this available to others to sort of be able to leverage that trust that's going to be behind our IDP. So I want to talk about the registration for the electronic identity. And the first step in this is to take that physical credential, scan the back. We will retrieve the demographics from the 2D barcode on the back, turn it around and scan the front. We use that for document authentication to see that it's an authentic document. And then to take a picture, I think I clicked twice there, but take a self-portrait picture. And this is one of the areas where we've worked really hard on. We're looking at the technology with which you can take a self-portrait that will match against the driver's license photo. There's standards for how a driver's license photo is taken. They do vary. It varies just in something like glasses on or off, but we want to coach the user well to take a photo that will match against that original source. And then we're going to, I'm going back here. The concept here is to perform a multi-factor authentication against the information from that original identity proof, and in doing so, bring the value over. So we send that packet that's been gathered back to North Carolina DOT and have them do a demographic and a biometric match to see that the information collected from the license information, the license authenticity, and then also the biometric matches that from the original proof. And in performing that match, we're going to essentially sort of bring the value of that identity proof, whatever percentage we can bring over, we'll bring it over into the electronic identity. We'll then store attributes on the device. We'll store the biometric template on the device and another biometric template for future matching. And then we'll have pointers to that in our electronic identity, which is housed in the glue server and the IDP server. So again, so the concept is to extract as much of that value as we can and bring that of the proofing process and bring it into the electronic identity. And then utilize OpenID Connect to allow another IDP, allow my card as an IDP that they presently perform authentications against your bank account. They will ping against your bank account to be sure that you're the holder of it, and perform that periodically. That creates a they then use that. Their customers, their relying parties, rely on the fact that they've verified the bank account. So we'll bring that trust from the driver's license over into their identity provider portal, and their customers would have a chance to use that. So we're going to run that as a proof of concept to just show the sort of daisy chaining of the value from the identity proof to the electronic identity into the IDP. So that's the registration process. And then the login. So you notice that I mentioned little there about collecting any other attributes. We collected them from the license. So, but the mobile phone number, potentially an email address are key there too. So now we're going to look at the login. And in this case, I've added a service provider and a web client. So we've got North Carolina DHHS then as the service provider and the consumer's device as their web client. And the user then wants to use this electronic identity that's been extracted into their mobile phone to log in. So how do they do that and log into the service provider? Service provider will request from our IDP, provide the session information and the level of assurance code, and get back a QR code that they then display on the site. So they'll render that QR code. Then the user can use the mobile identity app to snap a picture of that QR code, and will essentially then, and if the LOA indicates so if it's a high enough LOA, perform another authentication to reinsure that they are the user of the mobile device, so another face match to the template that's on the device. And if that matches, we'll sort of push the login information back and then log in the session information for them. And we tend to use OpenID Connect as a standard to make that happen. So in essence then, the mobile device is both the username and the password. It's a multi-factor authenticator. And that will transition that web page, transition the person to their logged in state. Now, the application for benefits is something that could daisy chain onto the end of this or be a separate event, but I wanted to cover it as well here in the same slides. Essentially, the service provider is saying, now I want the identity attributes for this person, because they're applying for benefits. So the application process is one where you need to, you fill out the top of the form. We'll use UMA, User Managed Access, Profile of OAuth, as a means to then gather, for the consumer to consent to or authorize the release of their attributes. Again, an LOA-based authentication and a consent there will allow the release of those attributes back to the service provider. So I was going to spin that around then and show you from a different point of view. So that was kind of maybe slightly architectural point of view. Spin it around and let's take a look at it from the user's point of view. We want to really simplify this application for benefits. We want this to be easier than filling out the top of the form. So essentially gain another another choice in how the user can apply for benefits or log in for their benefits. The QR code showing there. If they happen to click the QR code, we could expand the instructions, but whether or not they do that, you can still utilize the mobile phone, snap a picture of that QR code. Inside the QR code is both the session information and the LOA. If it's required, they can take another self-photo and consent. That self-photo is basically a biometric match against the template on the device. And transition to the state where they are logged in, top of the form is filled out, they've been told you don't need to show up and perform your in-person proofing, and your benefits are essentially expedited at this point. So how we want to put this all together really depends on standards. I've made this, and I invite you all to come and talk to me to tell me where I might have missed something. Because since our goal is to try and do this entirely within standards, and since we're Glue, it's entirely within the open source Glue server, with the exception of the scripts that talk to our devices and then our policies in the framework. But I've tried to note here where we've identified a standard we want to use, and somewhere I don't know that there is one. So people might tell me, oh, point me to one that exists. The QR code is one where it doesn't. That's in purple here. The LOA profiles, so we intend to register a set of profiles that will indicate what the different levels of assurance are within our trust framework. The service provider has access to those and can embed them in the QR codes as well. And then authentication is one where, since time of application of the grant, FIDO has really kind of made a splash here. So we're looking at that as well as an open standard for the pathway between our IDP and the authenticator device. And again, that would allow users to interoperably to choose an authenticator that works for them.
All right, so just wrapping up, we were asked to give a little bit of a sense of what the milestones look like. So again, kind of keeping with our little roadway theme, this is what the path looks like for us for the next 18 to 24 months. We have some things coming up real soon where we're delivering a piece of infrastructure we call ID Fabric to North Carolina DOT. That's going to be the mechanism by which they receive requests from us and where they queue up and fetch records to be able to perform the matches that we've been talking about to do the authentications. That's the standard software by which we offer the DMVs to be able to make their trusted information as well as their capabilities available to other entities safely and securely. Then you see month 8, 9, 10, various pieces of infrastructure getting delivered. The Glue IDP, OpenID Connect adapter, the multi-factor authentication components are getting delivered to DHHS. Also in month 9, some of the University of Texas findings around the analysis of the in-person proofing process at DMV versus those that are used in some of the more standard LOA use cases are established. Then our trust frameworks are established. The commercial APIs are made available for our commercial partners to test with. And then we enter into our operational pilot phase. We're actually going to run the pilot for at least 3 months. We may actually extend it beyond that through the full 24. But that's where we're actually going to be opening up the access for people to self-select themselves to come in and use this pilot as their ideal means for applying for benefits with DHHS. So lastly, we were asked to kind of talk about what we thought the collaboration with you all would look like. And, from a sharing perspective, we feel the obligation obviously is being awarded one of these grants to bring to you as much as we possibly can about what we learned. So the experiences we have in our projects, we're here and available to answer questions. The evaluations and findings that the University of Texas comes out with, we think are going to be universally applicable. We want everybody to have access to that. Any of the privacy considerations, the vectors of trust work that is starting to develop, and the vision and strategy of this pilot to other audiences, we're going to continue to bring that forward. But on the flip side, things that we hope to learn are, obviously many of you have been through this effort in some way, shape, or form before, have come across roadblocks or hurdles that we're going to need help with. So please, if you see us walking into a wall, please come tell us, because we'd like to avoid doing that. Perspectives and intel on our use of standards that David mentioned. And then, at the end of the day, we're really excited about this because we think it has the possibility to really expand widely, because we're using something that almost every adult in the United States carries in their pocket as the basis for trust. But we're not going to get there by ourselves, so our ability to use the trust framework right, our ability to provide interoperability channels the right way are all going to be key to whether or not we're successful. So we're going to be looking to learn as much as we can from you, and we're going to be looking to participate more deeply in the work that the group is already doing as well. So hopefully you'll be happy to see us on a regular basis digging in and working on these things together. That's our quick high-level overview of the pilot, and I guess we'll do some Q&A in a little while. All right. Thank you.